You are listening to the 2 and Out CFL podcast, a proud member of the Canadian Football Podcast Network.
There's not really much else to say about that.
I thought we were going to go through that game quicker than Manziel ran to the dressing room.
Grab some poutine and a double-double. It's time for the 2 and Out CFL podcast.
Now they have to kick it out, and they do!
Every week, Travis Currah.
Does anybody still care about this podcast?
And Brazilian Ty.
Punters are people, too.
Talk fantasy football, bring you the latest in CFL news, and sprinkle in a little bit of nonsense.
Are you kidding? This is unbelievable!
Ready, set, hunt!
And we are part of the Alberta Podcast Network, powered by ATB. I do want to say thanks again to Trent Block-Hansen from the band Artificial Lift. Make sure you Google them, artificialliftband.com. He has done all of the themes for 2 and Out from the beginning of the podcast in 2015. He's, I'm trying to think, he's kind of like, the Dave Grohl when the Foo Fighters first started, playing every instrument. That guy's an all-world talent, man.
Well, I mean, he's not as good as the drummer in that band, but he's okay. Like, Artificial Lift's drummer is pretty good.
You know him?
Yeah, he's my cousin, and he sold me his condo for cheap.
Really?
Yeah.
How did I not know this?
I'm sure we've talked about it, but you just disregard everything I say.
That's pretty fair. That's probably one of the fairest things you've said on the podcast this year.
I can't blame you.
So I do want to get an update from you. How's the clean drinking going? You're not drinking the good old nectar of the gods, the Coca-Cola.
I haven't had a Coke since Tuesday, and my life sucks.
Do you have any withdrawal symptoms?
I am tired all the time.
How much sleep do you get?
Like 7.5, 8 hours a night.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, about 8 a.m. It's like, we're at the gas station, filling up the truck, run across the street or run across the parking lot to McDonald's to grab a breakfast sandwich, and that fountain Coke is just staring you right in the face. It's like, no, I'll just get the sandwich, and then it's like noon, going through town. Oh, gas station, maybe I'll stop in. Nope, grab a water like a loser. Oh, it's just the worst. I did crush an entire bag of M&M almonds, though, before we recorded.
M&M almonds. I like that idea. I go for the peanut or the peanut butter, but the almonds, because I like me some chocolate almonds. Usually they don't have the good old M&M's candy on them. How are they?
They're not as good as just plain chocolate-covered almonds, but, I mean, I had to get sugar somehow.
You know what? Like, when people bring up, addiction to all these different kinds of things, caffeine and sugar addiction is a real thing, and you don't realize it until you stop doing it.
Yep.
I've got a double-double in my hands right now, so I got my sugar and caffeine intake for the day in my hands. I probably did it half a coffee ago, really, but
the worst part is that I haven't cleaned out the fridge for 2 days, so I have leftovers and stuff in there. But I left the empty box, the empty Coke case, in the fridge. So every time I open the fridge, I'm like, oh, I got one more pop left, and I don't. And I just close the fridge because I'm mad, and I don't take the box out.
You are officially a glutton for punishment.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
That's like, keeping a picture of your ex-girlfriend by your bed.
Or staying friends with her on Facebook.
Join 2 and Out for CFL Fantasy and CFL Pick'em and show Currah and Ty what you got.
They are who we thought they were.
Just click cflfantasy.tsn.ca.
Enough from talking about it. There has to be consequences.
And pick'em.cfl.ca.
All right. Well, it was a big weekend in the Canadian Football League, and it started in Ottawa. Hamilton falls to the Ottawa Red Blacks, a massive win for Ottawa, 35-31. I guess before we get started, Lewis Ward sets a pro football record for consecutive field goals. His parents were in the stands, and he did it in style. The record breaker was a 52-yarder. It was awesome.
And he had lots of room to spare.
He did.
He murdered that ball. He's been a picture of consistency all year. I I don't know how you don't put him in the running for Rookie of the Year, for at least the East rookie.
You know, I've been thinking about that as well. There are some rookies that aren't getting talked about. Don Sirocco's been starting on, I think it's Don Sirocco. He's been starting on the Tiger Cats offensive line all year long, and he was just drafted this year. So for a rookie to get drafted and start all season long, that is really impressive. So I think there's a good chance it's going to be Sirocco versus Ward out of the it's Darius, out of the East. And then Roberson in the secondary for the Stampeders has been starting most of the year as well. So there are some good rookies, just, not guys that are getting all of the spotlight. Because some of those secondary and offensive lineman guys, it's better if you don't talk about them. But Ward, I can't see him losing a special teams nod at the end of the season. I really can't think of anybody better than him there, for sure.
Yeah, and it's not like kickers are the sexy pick for Rookie of the Year.
Yeah. He's got that going against him. You feel bad for the guy. It's not his fault, but he's a hell of a kicker. You can't go wrong with that. I'm rooting for him. If he gets 2 trophies in the case at the end of the season, I will not complain at all. What I found very surprising in this game, well, the Ticats they really kept Ottawa in it. They could have put Ottawa away. They were leading for most of the game, and then the fourth quarter, Ottawa just kind of turned things on, and the momentum really changed. Delvin Breaux ended up getting hurt, and then Ottawa, they finished that drive with a touchdown. Then Brandon Banks gets hurt, and then the wheels kind of fell off the rails a little bit for Hamilton after that, and the offense really kind of stalled. And what I found surprising in this one is how William Powell was limited. I think at one point he had less than 2 yards a carry. And then in the fourth quarter, basically the final drive of the game, Powell showed why he is so valuable to this Red Blacks team and put the game away and really iced it. But Big Teddy Laurent and the D-line for Hamilton had a game here, and they limited Powell to 21 carries, 87 yards. That is impressive to hold him to that.
That's so hard to do. He's such a good physical runner. And a huge part of that Ottawa offense. And if they get him going, it's so much easier for them to get the rest of their offense going. He only averaged 4 yards a carry when all was said and done. But when they needed him, he stepped up and performed for sure.
It was kind of funny. At the end of the first half, it was kind of looking like, man, what's Trevor Harris doing here? And then by the end of the game, he's 24 of 32. 75% completion percentage, 341 yards. He only had the one touchdown, but it turned out to be a nice game for Mr. Trevor Harris, and it really looks like that connection with R.J. Harris is just getting better and better as the season goes on. He's kind of he hasn't had the production as he had even 6-7 weeks ago, but 5 catches for 128 yards here. It kind of takes the pressure off of your Sinopolis, your Ellingsons, and Spencers. If one of those guys aren't going off here, RJ is there and proving that they found a nice little receiver here.
Not only takes pressure off for those other guys to perform, but makes the defense think about a fourth target coming out of that offense, and that just makes it so hard to cover. It just, the more weapons you have, the better. And if you have a guy that starts producing like he has been, and like he's shown that he can do, it's going to open things up for the other guys. And we've seen it with this team where, guys will sacrifice their own stats to make sure, or if a guy is hot, to make sure that the whole team succeeds, not just worry about their stats.
It's going to be a really interesting race here for most outstanding Canadian because Brad Sinopoli has over 100 catches on the season. He had 8 catches in this one on 10 targets for 113 yards. It's got to be Sinopoli versus Brad or Andrew Harris at the end, doesn't it?
I would think so. I don't think there's a lot of other. There's other options, but there's nobody on their level right now.
Where would your vote go?
Sinopoli.
Sinopoli, eh?
Yeah, just he's just been, I don't know. It just seems, Winnipeg relies a lot on Andrew Harris, and I get that he's a huge part of their offense, but Sinopoli, I mean, just a picture of consistency the last 4 years. And, this year is no different. He's probably going to break the record for receptions by a Canadian, and I just think he's had, just a better year.
Let's talk about Hamilton here. Mazzoli, 23 of 34 for 342 yards. He had the 3 TDs and an interception. Marquay McDaniel gets his first catch as a Tiger Cat. Mike Jones had another long 43-yard reception. And Alex Green comes back, 15 carries, 61 yards. And I think the big thing here was the Red Blacks keeping him out of the end zone, because this guy has been putting up scores left and right since he made his return this season. And I know it was his first game back off the 6-gamer, but it was big for Ottawa to limit Alex Green for sure.
You limit Alex Green and you take away a huge weapon from that offense, and you can kind of focus in on Banks, Tasker, Mike Jones to a certain extent. And it just helps your secondary so much to know that they don't have to worry about crashing down on a run play or have to worry about getting blocked, especially if the line and the linebackers can take care of that running game. So that was huge for the Ottawa defense.
Now, Luke Tasker had an awesome game, 7 catches, 60 yards, and 2 touchdowns. That was on 10 targets. It's clear that Mazzoli likes to go to him when the things get tough. And when they're really close to the end zone, they're in the red zone, they like to go to Luke Tasker. But Brandon Banks has been unbelievable this season. He had 8 catches, 133 yards, and a touchdown. But he ends up leaving the game. It looked like a shoulder injury. If this is a long-term injury for the Tiger Cats, it comes at a brutal time for this team.
Broken clavicle, out for the season. That's a tough pill to swallow for this offense right now. It's like, Luke Tasker, only 60 yards, but, he still got 2 TDs. He can score. Banks just turns something out of nothing. Seems every time that he gets the ball, he's able to make guys miss and make huge plays, and that's going to be a huge hole for the Tiger Cats to fill. And it just, they haven't beaten the good teams this year, and now it's going to be even tougher for them coming down the stretch without Banks.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting because these two teams go at it again in a slugfest at Tim Hortons Field this week, and it's going to decide the Eastern Division. And the Ticats, without their biggest weapon, it's going to be tough to get ahead of Ottawa and win that. They did have Justin Buren come in. He's a rookie, 4 catches for 45 yards, so he did show some flashes. I mean, if you're thinking fantasy, Mike Jones, maybe Justin Buren will be some cheap options, but Luke Tasker probably going to be the guy for the last few weeks of this season. But he's going to be in tough working against the team's best defenders, especially without Banks in there.
And he gives up a lot of size.
He does. Well, hey, Banks does too, but he's got more speed than Tasker.
Banks has more speed. Tasker, he will fight for every ball, every yard that he gets. So, I mean, it is a or I shouldn't say it's a possibility, but I mean, it's he has that skill set that, he might not be able to break the big play all the time, but he makes plays. He catches the ball. He helps move that offense, which in turn, like when they move the ball down the field, it doesn't matter whether it's him, Banks, Green, Mike Jones, anybody. He's so sure-handed. Move the offense down and they get another crack at it, and they can control the clock and finish drives even without Brandon Banks, which is a distinct possibility. They can beat Ottawa, but I think without Banks, and I know they had was it Sean Thomas Erlington returning kicks? It's not the same. So the field might be a little longer, but
Frankie Williams, he's shown flashes
Frankie Williams,
there too,
sorry. Yep. So I mean, if they can get the same return game, I mean, and they get the same kind of field position to start, it's not going to be that big of a deal. It's just that Luke Tasker might be the first option instead of kind of that check down read that we see so often from Mazzoli.
All right, that second half of the Friday night doubleheader had the BC Lions beating the Edmonton Eskimos 42-32. There's a lot to talk about in this game. The way it started, it looked like the Eskimos were showing a lot of fire here. They were up 12-0, and the BC Lions were shooting themselves in the foot with some penalties. They had some, big penalties that took a lot of field position off of the board. But after Edmonton goes up 12-0, Chris Rainey returns to the house, man. He had himself a 95-yard kick return for a touchdown. And then from then on out, it really looked like it was all BC. I know that Edmonton put another 20 points on the board after that, including a pick six from, what's that butthead's name? Aaron Grimes.
Good old Grimy, as he likes to be called.
Yeah, he is grimy. And then it just seemed like all BC. The incredible thing here is I don't think Travis Lulay had a completion until 18 seconds left in the first quarter, and it was a touchdown pass. Devere Posey has arrived. So on the pod on Thursday, I said he's going to have himself, it's a good shot for him to have a big, long touchdown in this one. He ended up having a 65-yard touchdown, but he added another 2 touchdowns on top of that. So he had 5 catches, 113 yards. Now, all of a sudden, Burnham and Posey are the dynamic duo of that Lions receiving core. It became a really big signing for them. And how about that trade for Tyrell Sutton? How do you not like watching this guy play? Because I feel like he has been almost forgotten about, not really forgotten about, but kind of overlooked because he's been in Montreal on these bad teams. Well, now he's in the Western Division, beaten up on Calgary, beaten up on Edmonton. It is going to be a war in Regina between the Lions and Riders this weekend. But Sutton, he's not going to run around you. He looks for contact, and how do you not like that?
As a defender, it's like, oh, man, not again.
Yeah, get out of that guy's way.
As a fan, it is great to watch.
He had 16 carries for 97 yards, so he had over 6 yards a carry. He just gets out there and bowls people over. And, I mean, the Eskimo secondary, if their defensive line can't get pressure, they're in trouble. And they were trying to blitz. And Lulay, say this, I mean, I don't even know how do the stats even analyze this guy? Because he goes 14 for 21 for 251, 2 interceptions, but he added the 4 touchdowns. He is so calm under pressure. You'd think after all the injuries in his career that when he's getting blitzed, he would be feeling the pressure, but no, he still doesn't care. And how do you not like that?
I think the only team he really worries about is the Alouettes.
Yeah, he's had some bad luck against them. It's crazy.
But it's in every big game, he seems to show up, have a hell of a game, put up the numbers that he needs to win. And we saw it again on Friday night. I mean, if they got to him, he was able to evade or, get rid of that ball quick and, just make sure that if his offensive line couldn't protect him, that he could protect himself somewhat and made the plays he had to. He didn't put up, they weren't gaudy numbers by any means. I mean, 4 touchdowns. 4 touchdowns is good.
Yeah.
The 2 picks kind of takes away from that a little bit. But, I mean, he played the game he had to win, and that's exactly what you want at this time of year because it gets tough to win late in the year for sure.
Oh, I think this tells the story for the Edmonton Eskimos. C.J. Gable, 6 carries for 11 yards.
I don't get it. I know they were losing, but
hey, they were up 12-0 early, man, and then they gave up the return. That should have been C.J. Gable here to try and slow the game down a bit.
Oh, for sure. Control the clock. Try to punish the defense a little bit. That hashtag is starting to reappear on Twitter of hashtag run the damn ball. And it only seems to show up during Eskimo games, which is weird. I don't understand what Jason Moss is doing. If this is how they're going to use him, why did you trade for him? It just doesn't make any sense.
Okay,
unless
so
he's hurt.
You don't understand what
hurt.
Jason Moss is doing. Let's talk about this then.
Kicking on first down?
2 minutes
is this
left
where we're
in the
going?
game. You're about 30, 35-yard line, first and 10, and you kick the field goal. Mm-hmm. You're down 10. You need the touchdown anyway.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what if you waste a minute 30 trying to get that touchdown?
But what does it matter? You need the touchdown.
Yeah, but you also need the field goal.
That's the last thing you got to worry about.
It's unconventional. I'll give you that. At least it went for it on first down, so something happened. You have the chance to redo it. I understand the thinking that, with 2 minutes left, there'll still be time to get that touchdown. But from where you are on the field, there's no reason that you can't take a couple shots.
It just seemed like the wrong time to me because the Eskimo offense moved the ball to get to that point and then just stalled the momentum.
Yep. Yeah. But like you're in the vicinity. There's no reason to not take a shot or two, even if it's not in the end zone. Get down to the 5, and you have CJ Gable if you decide to ever use him again. You have Mike Riley. You have big guys in Bryant Mitchell and Duke Williams who in the red zone can go up and get a ball. I don't think they're going to waste a lot of time taking 2 or 3 shots at the end zone and then deciding to kick the field goal then, but to do it on first down. Super unconventional. I get the idea of leaving the time on the clock for your offense if you can get the ball back, but it's a bad look for Moss again. And we're just become accustomed to seeing this.
Can you agree with this? It just seemed like Moss was overthinking it.
He out-coached himself. I think it's just, yeah. You see it in baseball all the time with, pitching changes and, the NL is it's so bad. You see it in hockey with coaches shuffling lines. You see, it just guys buying into analytics and all this stuff. And don't get me wrong, analytics tell you part of the story. They don't tell you the whole story. So, at some point you got to go with your gut feeling and trust that, you have the reigning MOP and the leading receiver in the CFL. How you don't give them a chance to get you within 3 just doesn't make a lot of sense.
And then, the defense had a shot at stopping them, and I just don't think it was the right time to trust them. I think they ended up taking a stupid penalty, and the Lions with Tyrell Sutton, you got to stop them. And
but with that, they're going to kill a minute off the clock unless you use your timeouts, and you don't have any timeouts left for your offense. So, it was just another. We saw it in the West Final last year.
Well, then he should have. He likes kicking field goals, I guess. I don't know.
Well, I get if they don't get the touchdown, if they don't get any points off that drive, it's over.
Yeah,
so I understand.
On third.
That's what. I understand the whole kicking on first down in case you bobble something or whatever. But then take a shot on first down and then kick it on second down if you're so worried about that. At least take that chance to maybe put 6 up. But to just you're basically waving a white flag on that and just saying, kick the field goal and just take it from there. You're down by 7. You have to make a stop. You have to get your defense to make a play, and that second half wasn't very good for their defense. So I don't know what Moss is thinking. Unconventional to say the least, like I've said a couple times already, and it's a recurring theme for him, it seems.
Did Duke Williams look like a different guy to you in this game?
A little bit.
He didn't
looked a little more like Duke Williams.
Well, to me, he didn't look like he had the intensity, and he didn't have the swagger, the confidence that he has had in the past.
But he still had 4 catches for 80. He put up Duke Williams numbers.
He did.
But yeah, the body language and the intensity and stuff, that wasn't very Duke Williams-esque.
Yeah, there was a moment where they showed the receivers sitting on the bench, and it looked like they were just sitting there pouting. And what's that going to do? Bryant Mitchell, he had himself another nice one, 6 catches for 110 yards and a touchdown. But, man, there's no intensity. It seemed like as soon as Rainey had that 95-yard touchdown, they were done.
Well, and as a team that still controlled their playoff destiny, that is pathetic. That there's no excuse for that to be. You have to win this game. Buck up, because if you don't win this game, you need a lot of help. And you got to cheer for Calgary now. Like, how does that feel? How does that taste? Like, no, you win this game, and you have control over your own destiny for the rest of the year. And like you said, after that rainy touchdown, they mailed it in. They did not care, and that is. It's just tough to watch a team do that on the sidelines. Like, it's infuriating if you're a fan. And being an Oiler fan for years, I know what quitting looks like, and what guys are sitting on the sidelines pouting. It just pisses you off to no end. So I can just imagine how Eskimo fans feel after that game.
Mike Riley had 268 yards and a touchdown, and his 13th rushing touchdown of the season. A big number. One behind Doug Flutie's record of 14, but we'll talk about that record in just a little bit here. The Eskimos are not out of the playoffs yet. Like you said, they do need to cheer for Calgary, and I kind of want to see Calgary beat Winnipeg, but I kind of want to see Winnipeg beat Calgary as a Rider fan, so they can still have an outside shot at first, but Edmonton needs Calgary to go into Winnipeg and win, and then the last week of the season, it's Eskimos Bombers. It's all on the line at Commonwealth Stadium. As a fan, I think that's kind of what I want, those teams to slug it out on the last week of the season to get into the playoffs, because that would be really, really fun to watch. But like you said, Edmonton had it in their hands. They had a 12-0 lead, and I know it's the CFL and points go on the board so fast and all of that, but the fire was totally extinguished when Chris Rainey is back in this one and had a big return, and he had a couple returns wiped off the board because of penalties as well. So,
well, and he put up 200 return yards still.
Yeah,
he had 18 rushing yards, 4 receiving yards, 200 return yards, and a touchdown. Put up 17.2 points. Like, he barely touched the ball and put up that number. So, he put the ball in his hand. Good things usually happen.
Yeah, you know what? I don't want to sound like a whiner here or anything. I feel like he's been treated very poorly this season, and I don't know if some of the poor production is all his fault. But maybe there's more things, as far as attitude goes, that the coaches see and we don't. But it sure seems like the benching and the scratches have really lit a fire with Chris Rainey. Before we get to our next game, we're going to go through that game real quick, saying thank you to our friends at ATB Financial. They've actually got a new podcast that launched in September called We Are Alberta. It's hosted by ATB economist Nick Ford. They got a podcast coming out every month. So the next one's coming November 13th. If you want to check this out, they've had a couple cool episodes already. One about the legalization of cannabis, one about Alberta's changing energy sector. The next one, you got to assume it's going to be a good listen again, because Nick Ford knows what he's doing. ATB.com/WeAreAlberta. Check out the podcast at ATB.com/WeAreAlberta. The next game, Johnny Manziel, your lock of the week, did not close the deal. And the Argos end up beating the Als 26-22. I just got a couple sentences on this game because it really didn't mean all that much. I'm impressed that the teams in this game, they showed a lot of passion, man. Neither team really gave up. They showed up. Hey, go back to school, Travis. And you know what? They showed a lot of fight in this one. The hit of the game might have been Jim Popp getting leveled on the sideline.
Oh, man.
I wonder if he's like, the GM, maybe I shouldn't spend time on the sideline anymore.
Yeah, I had to listen on radio, and it sounded like it hurt on there.
Yeah. There were a couple 100-yard receivers in this one. Armani Edwards for the Argos, Eugene Lewis for the Alouettes. William Stanback had 118 yards. Manziel, 220 in the air, 38 on the ground. James Franklin, 277 passing, 2 interceptions, but he had himself a rushing touchdown. His 2 rushing touchdowns maybe? Just whatever. He he has 14 on the season. That ties Doug Flutie for the record all time. I hope Franklin goes for that record before the season wraps up. But he might be the toughest quarterback to tackle in the CFL right now. When you watch short yardage plays with James Franklin, it's almost a given. And he's not just getting an inch over the first down marker. He's sometimes getting 7, 8, 9 yards. And he bulldozed Brandon Dozier over.
Yeah, and they mix it up. He's not always going behind the center. Sometimes he'll be able to bootleg out or go over the guard. And, when you don't exactly know where the guy's going, it's really hard to try to close that hole up. And that being said, too, they could have that play called, and he's so quick to recognize what the defense is going to try to do, whether they're going to try to crash down on the center or on one of the sides, and he goes the other way, and that's what we saw on the first one, or on the tying touchdown. So, yeah, it's really hard to defend this guy. He's so mobile, and the more reps he gets, the better he will become as a quarterback. Whether or not we assume he's going to be a starter for the rest of the year, and maybe to start next year. And I think the more reps he gets, he's going to start playing like a starting quarterback in this league and start putting up big numbers.
As far as quarterbacks go, man, Johnny Manziel, he had a chance to lead the Owls down the field and win this one with a game-winning touchdown. But on the very last play of the game, okay, let's talk about the second last play. Manziel takes an intentional grounding penalty. Mike Sherman throws in Antonio Pipkin for the final play of the game for the Hail Mary. How many times have you seen this where a quarterback goes or a coach goes to the backup for the Hail Mary on the final play of the game? I don't know if I've ever seen that.
It's happened. It happened in the NFL earlier this year. I think it was Buffalo. It was Indianapolis because Andrew Luck's shoulder. That's not instilling a lot of confidence in your starter.
No way.
And it comes as no surprise it was Mike Sherman that did this. Shinetti reported after the game that Manziel is the quarterback right now, according to Adarius Bowman. According to Mike Sherman, he is not sure.
Really?
Yeah. So there's that.
Okay, one word. Is Sherman back next year?
Oh, man, probably.
Okay, one city. Where's Trestman coaching next year?
Huh.
I think it could be Edmonton, Montreal, or BC.
Yeah, I could see that.
And this sounds like a bold prediction. I think Trestman goes where Riley goes, and I think Riley goes where Trestman goes. Unless it's Montreal. I can't see Mike Riley going to the East.
Could you imagine?
That would flip the CFL upside down if that happened.
It'd be Anthony Calvillo all over again, and we can start hitting Montreal all over again.
Yeah. Here's the new scenario. Riley's not going to re-sign in Edmonton, so they trade him to Montreal for Johnny Manziel. Trestman goes to Montreal. Jason Moss and Manziel on the same team in Edmonton next year. Oh, let the circus come to Alberta, baby.
I don't know if Jason Moss is going to be there next year.
Well, if it's Manziel, oh yeah, he will be.
Oh man, yeah, because he's a real quarterback whisperer.
Hey, you know what? I think
Mind you, if you whisper, Jason Moss is going to hear it no matter where you are.
And he was great in Ottawa as an OC. And I think there's a lot of experiences and things that Moss is learning from this first head coaching gig. I don't know if he's going to be the guy next year, but no matter what, I do think Jason Moss is a good OC, and there's not really much else to say about that.
I thought we were going to go through that game quicker than Manziel ran to the dressing room.
Let's go to McMahon Stadium. Holy crap! I don't know where to start here. The Saskatchewan Roughriders beat the Calgary Stampeders 29-24. The Stamps actually did lose 2 in a row at home last year, but 2 in a row overall. Is it 2012 the last time they've lost 2 in a row?
Yeah, and I believe it was 2014. I know they didn't get swept by the Riders, but I mean the Riders still won 2 of the 3. But the last time the Stamps were swept in a season, I believe it was 2013.
By one team?
In a season series.
Wow.
So yeah, they have been dominant for a while. It's like not that that's breaking news.
Yeah, I mean everybody.
But yeah, I think it was 2012 last time they lost 2 in a row.
So the Riders got shut out last week, 31-0 to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. And on the opening drive, they looked like a completely different team. They drove down the field, and I know it only resulted in a field goal, but man. And then we've got a couple short drives. Bartel has a terrible line drive punt, and Romar Morris returns it to the house. Stamps are up 7-3. But then Zach Collaros and the Rider offense drives down the field and scores a touchdown, taking a 10-7 lead. In the first quarter, the Rider offense... I'm not
convinced that was actually Zach Collaros.
You texted me. You said, who's playing quarterback for the Riders?
Because it definitely wasn't Collaros from what we've seen this year.
No, I don't know if you got the stats. I think we're going to need to get this for Thursday's show. Zach Collaros versus the Calgary Stampeders, and then Zach Collaros versus everyone else.
I have them.
You do?
I do.
Okay, what's it look like? Is it a big difference?
It's huge.
This is crazy to me. I can't wait to hear this.
Okay, so Collaros versus the Stamps. In the 2 games he's played this year, has averaged 311 yards.
Okay.
Averaged 23 completions, 35 attempts, no touchdowns, no picks, 12.8 fantasy points.
Rest of the league, fantasy points isn't big, but no turnovers and over 300 yards.
Yeah. Rest of the league, 211 yards, 17 completions on 30 attempts, 9 touchdowns, 13 picks.
Are you? How does that work?
You tell me.
And
it doesn't make any sense.
Okay, Charleston Hughes didn't play in this game. Thursday, Jones said he was going to play. I don't want to talk about this much. It's been beaten like a dead horse. Friday, it ends up that Hughes is not going to play. And just judging by the way that Chris Jones was in the interview, I'm not sure it was his decision. So I don't know if it came from the board, the league, bet. All of the above, getting together and saying, okay, maybe not play Charleston in this one. But what I will say about the situation, it almost seemed like a blessing for this team that at practice, instead of being grilled about a 31-0 shutout to the Bombers, they're being grilled about Charleston Hughes.
Yeah, that could be, just it's a totally different narrative now, and last week is it's easier to put it behind them. That performance in Winnipeg, so that probably played a little bit of a part. And like you said, I don't know. I don't think it was Chris Jones' decision. I think they found out something that they know what's going to happen, and so they're getting out in front of it.
Maybe Hughes told them, "Hey, I'm going to plead guilty."
Yeah, maybe something like that, and they're going to get out in front of it, take care of it internally, and maybe the league doesn't, add any supplemental discipline on top of that. We don't know that for sure, but I mean, we've seen guys with DUIs not get benched, so that's what makes me think there's something else in the works.
And it's almost like they wanted to bench him for the Calgary game so he was ready for BC next week, and. And I know, here's the thing, when Chris Jones wears as many hats as he does, as the VP, the GM, the coach, the DC, as the coach in the DC, his job is to win football games at all costs, right? So
Yes,
I think it's hard for him to separate from that and look at the PR perspective, because there is part of that, and I think it's a very dangerous game to play. The court of public opinion. Like, should the masses be able to change decisions because of Twitter and Facebook? I think that's kind of a dangerous game to play. I don't know if that makes me sound like a wacko or anything. But
we've been to Rider games. Charleston Hughes getting a DUI is the least of the worries when there's 30,000 people leaving that stadium, and
hitting Highway 11 to Saskatoon or wherever.
There's quite a few that shouldn't be getting behind the wheel. So, I mean, there's bigger fish to fry here.
Yeah, so he got his punishment. He got benched, and I think the 34-year-old, of course, he didn't want the game off, but his legs will appreciate it, and he might end up back at Calgary for his first game in the West Final, and what a story that will end up being if the Riders somehow get to McMahon for the West Final, or vice versa. If these teams play in the playoffs,
maybe the West Final will be in Regina.
Yeah, that could happen the way things are going for the Stampeders and the way the Bombers have looked before this bye week, because the Bombers or the Stamps were just in a slugfest in this one. And I think it needs to be talked about. Cameron Marshall here had 11 rushes for 76 yards. He had 2 catches for 28. He had another 58 return yards. I think Trey Mason lost his job here.
Well, I mean, Marshall had a way better day on the ground, but Mason did have a touchdown. But, yeah, when you text me that, I was like, well, I can see it, because Mason hasn't been consistent, since he's been in the lineup. And it just, you never know what you're getting. Like 7 of 23, anybody can do that. We don't need to be paying Trey Mason to do it when Cameron Marshall's putting up 11 for 76.
And it doesn't get talked about as much as it should for running backs, but how valuable was Cameron Marshall in the backfield as an extra blocker?
Mm-hmm. And we've said that before when he was on the team and hurt last year, how he's able to hide the struggles of the offensive line when they have trouble blocking, because he's such a good pass blocker. And we saw it again. When he's in there and they don't send him out as a receiver, and he's able to stay in there and block, gives Collaros that much more time.
So I think if you got to pick 2 out of 3 between Marshall, Mason, and Thigpen, you pick Thigpen and Marshall.
Yeah,
and that's just me.
I do. Marshall's he's a more dynamic back. He's a more versatile back. He's able to leak out and make catches, whereas Trey Mason just, I don't know. He doesn't get it done on the ground. I mean, he's had 1, maybe 2 good games this year. He's not the best receiving back that we've ever seen. Not that Cam Marshall is, but I mean, on this team, he's not better than him or Thigpen. So I don't understand why he would still be getting in the lineup if you have Marshall and Thigpen going and healthy.
And you know what? I thought Marshall should have been on the team in training camp. He did hurt himself Labor Day last year, and he was looking great up until that point. But now he's fresh. Obviously, he's healthy. He was a big part of this win against Calgary, and so is Jordan Williams-Lambert. He comes back in this one, 5 catches on 7 targets for 113 yards. Just a great game here. And Kyron Moore had a bounce-back game, 5 catches on 6 targets for 68 yards. Both those guys combined, you got yourself about 28.7 fantasy points there. And just comparing it to last week, Kyron Moore had himself a real bounce-back game here. And they're doing this without the leader of the receiving corps, Naaman Roosevelt. These young guys, I think there's a lot of potential there. And KD Cannon even had himself a couple nice catches in this one. Williams-Lambert, if he stays here, is an absolute monster. And if there's good quarterback play and good protection, this guy could be an all-star next season.
Without a doubt. He's shown numerous times this year now that he can go up, get the ball, and make guys miss. We saw it on Saturday. Turns around on a hitch route or on a kind of a screen, and I don't know how he found room between the defender and the sideline, and make a guy miss, make another guy miss, get yards. It's great to catch the ball, but if you can make plays afterwards and gain extra yards by making guys miss or being physical, that's even more of an added asset for this offense. Especially with Naaman Roosevelt out, they need guys to step up.
So all three Rider quarterbacks got into the game.
Oh, man.
And, maybe 3 out of the 4. Maybe I should say that. David Watford even had a 10-yard carry. But Nick Marshall comes in, and it was almost the exact same play they tried against Edmonton a few weeks ago in Regina, just the other way. Had himself, about a 24-yard gain there, and no flag on the play. Now, when we talk short yardage, I guess we can call them quarterbacks in the Canadian Football League. I think it's Nick Marshall, Mike Riley, James Franklin, and everybody else.
Well, percentage-wise, it was that.
Yeah.
Early in the year. I think I would put, James Franklin and Mike Riley ahead just on the sole purpose that they can do a little more than Nick Marshall. Maybe through the air. But, yeah, he has been, just a guy that can plug in on the goal line 1 yard and inside the 2 basically, and you can almost just put 6 points up. And when with this offense struggling the way it is to score touchdowns with Collaros behind center, it's kind of a breath of fresh air when they can get. He might not be one of your 3 quarterbacks, but a guy that can come in and be a quarterback, so to speak, and put points up for you.
So can Nick Marshall be the third string quarterback and DB? Be like the 60s and a guy playing both ways?
Why not?
Hey, let Bridge go. Keep Watford, Collaros, and Marshall. There you go.
Oh, man. You're going to have a lot of people angry at you.
The Rider offensive line and Josiah St. John got off to a rough start.
Shocker.
It looked very shaky in the first half, but they turned it around. And I think a big part of that, not only is Cam Marshall in the backfield, but Brandon Labatt being the leader at center and helping out these guards and just hitting basically Micah Johnson in the face. And Micah didn't like it. And we'll get to that. He really did not like getting hit in the face with the big boys on the Rider offensive line. It was a warfare in the trenches in this one. But how big is that trade for the Saskatchewan Roughriders to trade Josh Stanford in a pick to Montreal for Patrick Lavoie and Philip Blake, who Lavoie in this one had 5 catches for 30 yards. He's another valuable blocker. And Blake has been starting as well. That trade is a big one for this Rider team.
That's huge. You can never have too much offensive line depth. I don't know how many times we have to say this. And Philip Blake, has started every game that he has been in the CFL for.
That's awesome.
So you know that he is a serviceable guard in this league. And, I say that sarcastically, he's damn good. And if with Labatt playing center, St. John in there playing on the other side of him, Labatt's such a leader on that offensive line, and to piss Micah Johnson off is funny to me just because he never shuts up. So, but if they can keep a group together, and, they can start to become a cohesive unit and to have Cameron Marshall back there in case something does go wrong up front as that 6th blocker, this team can do a lot of things offensively. And Patrick Lavoie had a really good game too. So, the offense again struggled to score, but that offensive line looked pretty good in that second half after they kind of got everything sorted out there early.
The offense, while they didn't finish many drives. Lowther had to kick 5 field goals. The Stampeder defense does tighten up when it gets close to the end zone. So the fact that they were able to move the ball, there were a lot of long fields for this one in Saskatchewan because you got Rob Maver punting the ball back there, one of the best in the league, and the Riders and Zach Collaros were able to get themselves out of trouble a lot, and that's a lot more than we can say about this offense in the past. It was, honestly, it blew me away because I don't have much confidence in the Saskatchewan Roughriders offense, but there were times when they were taking penalties and there was some second and long situations, but Collaros was able to convert them. But you cited the stats, Collaros versus Calgary and Collaros versus everybody else. They just come into this one just a lot more prepared. It's quite crazy to watch, actually. But I wanted to ask you, I was in the stands. I ended up going to the game with my dad. We had a wonderful time.
Yeah, it was nice to see you brought your bodyguard.
McMahon Stadium, it's not the best place. We know that. But they got some damn good food there, man. We had a beef sandwich. And this thing, it looked like they were cooking it for about 18 hours. They freshly slice it for you. It was just absolutely beautiful. So McMahon Stadium, they actually got some good food there. But what did you make of the two offensive pass interference calls against Saskatchewan? One on Shaq Evans, one on Jordan Williams-Lambert, and one was actually challenged by Dave Dickinson. Haven't really seen many offensive pass interference calls get challenged and overturned.
At some point, you gotta let the guys play. That being, with that though, I mean, if the offense, if the receiver's going to initiate contact and try to be a little more physical and maybe affect, the DB has the same right to the ball that the receiver does. So, I mean, I get it. I think those calls could have went either way. I don't know. I've struggled with the pass interference challenge. I understand why they have it. I just don't like judgment calls being able to be challenged, and it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It's so much different when you can slow it down and look at it than
of course,
in real
everything
time.
looks like interference at slow motion.
So then you can exactly right. So you can find so much more stuff. It takes away a little bit of the nuance.
So Jordan Williams-Lambert on he straight up extended his arm, and as soon as you extend your arm the full length, you get in trouble a little bit there.
Even if you're not pushing.
Yeah, so if he didn't extend it the whole way, I think it would have been okay. I have not seen the Shaq Evans call, but it seems very rare that you see two offensive pass interference calls on one team. A shout-out needs to go to Ed Gainey for that tackle to stop the two-point conversion to keep Saskatchewan 5 points up on the Stampeders. Mike Edam had an interception, and I know he got a penalty on the last drive of the game, but what a hit. And it kind of seemed like a statement hit. You're not going to roll over us easy, Calgary. And the next game, this is what you have to look forward to. I'm glad that the receiver is able to bounce up, but this Adam guy, he's really coming into his own here on this Rider defense. If
you want that part of the field, you're going to have to pay the price to get it. And that's what he did. He kind of just somewhat standing up for his team, showing that they're not going to back down to anybody. Don't care that, this is the best team in the league. Just plays tough, hard-nosed football. It's just so nice to watch. We've gone, especially as Riders, we've gone through years where it seemed like guys were afraid to make a hit. And, yardage was really
other guys
easy.
Literally stepping out of the way.
Yeah, yardage was really easy to gain. So it was nice to see that change. As for that Markeith Amble's 2-point convert, I don't know what that referee was watching.
I saw it from the stands. I was in the end zone. I'm like, he did not break the plane.
No, and in real time, from the angle they had, super quick, it's like maybe he extended somewhere and we just didn't see it from the angle. And then they show it from the other side, and it's like he barely got past the 1 yard line. So I don't know what. I guess you call it a 2-point convert and it gets automatically reviewed. So
yeah,
I guess it doesn't really matter, but it just looks really bad.
Yeah, Gainey has made some big tackles the last few weeks. Bryant Mitchell on the Hail Mary and that big stop on the 2-point conversion. I'm interested to see what your perspective was watching on TV, because this game was very chippy, There were a lot of scrums, and usually offensive linemen, especially Brendan Labatt, he's not a big talker, and he's not a big trash talker. So what was Micah Johnson fired up about? Was just him getting shut down and hit in the mouth that was not making him happy, or what?
I think so. I was busy doing stuff for work, and I was watching the game and having to do stuff. But at halftime, this is what I find hilarious. So at halftime, Micah Johnson and some of the Stampeders, as everybody's going to the room, get in the face of the Riders, it gets broken up, whatever. This continues throughout the entire game, and it was chippy both ways. Like, nobody played exactly clean when they got into piles. There was stuff you would notice, but then Micah Johnson takes a boneheaded penalty in the end zone.
Yeah, and gave him a first down, right?
And then goes to his teammates and oh man, I don't know what that was about. Like, you read his lips. I mean, some choice words were spoken, I'm sure, but what are you complaining about, man? You're being dumb. Like, if you're gonna give up penalties like that, I mean, it's really you're putting your team back against the wall, making it really hard for you to win football games. It's just they lost their head a little bit. They lost their cool, Micah Johnson especially, and I'm not going to say that's what cost them the game, but it definitely didn't help.
Well, and one of the plays Micah made in the first half, the sack, and he just made St. John look like a goof. He's a good player. And at the end of the game, and this wasn't even on TSN, there was another scuffle when TSN already turned away, and guys were getting knocked down. Jones ran in there. It was kind of funny because half the teams are praying at center field. The other half is fighting. Like, this
war and peace, man. War and peace.
If these teams play in the playoffs, it is going to be a battle. I do want to read this Facebook message we got from Richard, Stampeders fan. He says, as season ticket holders, we always dread Riders games because of the plethora of knuckle-dragging mouth breathers that always show up wearing green shirts. Hey, thanks, Richard. Is that a shot at me? So he goes, so when a family of 4 Riders fans sat down in front of us, I was glad that we'd at least be free of the usual drunken Rider fan antics and just enjoy some of the good-natured banter. I will say this. I saw a Rider fan spill beer on a girl. He offered her $50. You can spill beer on me, man. I'll take $50. Anyway.
Yeah, I'd be okay with that.
Then he goes, what I did not expect was for the son, maybe 10 years old, to turn out to be a Stamps fan. Watching this intrepid boy going nose-to-nose with his father, arguing over play calls, both amused and inspired, half our section. My wife and I liked him so much that we bought him a Stamps hat. It's only fitting that in a house of green, the boy should have some red to defend himself with. So as I've read some ballyhoo about the league's fans getting older and the CFL dying, I meet kids like this, and I know the future is bright. As a Rider fan myself, Richard, that was well written.
And, he paints all Rider fans with the same brush, which is pretty fair because there is not a big amount of Rider fans who aren't that.
Especially the ones that show up in Calgary. There's some classy that show up, but in the end zones in Calgary and maybe in between the sidelines, it gets a little bit crazy. But last note of the season, or the podcast, I want to ask you, Brazilian Ty, and hey, maybe you can answer this on Twitter at 2andoutcfl, Facebook, send us a message there, or email 2andoutcfl@gmail.com. When the Atlantic Schooners come into the league, you got 5 teams in each division. And you're going to think I'm an idiot for saying this, but what about an unbalanced schedule where a team plays 10 inside its division and 8 outside of it? Because what we are seeing here at the end of the season with all of these interdivisional games is absolutely phenomenal. There is no better way to wrap up a season. And with this Stampeders Riders slugfest, I don't care if I see that 4 or 5 times a season instead of just 2 or 3. I almost want to see that more. What do you think of an unbalanced schedule? Because I saw that suggestion, and I'm kind of getting behind that a little bit.
That's what you do in professional sports. Look at Major League Baseball. You play 19 games against your division opponents, each one, and you only play 6 or 7 against everybody else. So unless if they're going to keep 2 divisions and that's going to matter for playoffs, it has to be unbalanced. If you're going to play if you're going to play everybody twice, there's no need for divisions because it's meaningless.
Exactly. So if you keep the divisions, unbalanced schedule, because what we're seeing here between the Stamps, Riders, Esks, Lions, and Bombers is unbelievable, and this is exactly what we want as fans. It is still not decided, as only the Lions, Riders, and Stamps have it figured out to get into the playoffs. The Bombers and Esks are still fighting, and 2 weeks left. So I absolutely love what is happening in the CFL right now. Unbalanced schedule or not, at 2&Out CFL, let Brazilian Ty and I know what you think. And it only gets better as we still got 2 weeks left in the season. Oh, man, I got to say, man, the chill in the air October football I absolutely love, man.
And guys start to hate each other, whether it's on the same team or on the other team, and it just makes it so much better.
Oh, yeah. I can't wait to watch the offensive line in Saskatchewan go toe-to-toe with Sean Lemon and Odell Willis the other way. And Calgary, Winnipeg is going to be a fun one to watch as well. So next
we get to watch the rematch of Toronto-Montreal this week. Yeah,
another game of the season. It just gets better and better. We are a part of the Alberta Podcast Network, powered by ATB. Stay tuned to 2&Out for maybe a cool announcement happening Grey Cup week. And, we'll announce it before then, but it might happen Grey Cup week. So we hope to see you there. AlbertaPodcastNetwork.com. Check out Press Start to Join. I don't know about you. It's getting cold outside. I like to sit on the couch and play some video games, so that's what these guys do. Josh and Alan talk about video games, movies, TVs, comics, Star Wars. Does it get any... Is there anything else to talk about? Well, football and wrestling.
No, probably. Well, I don't... It doesn't even have to be cold out for me to want to stay inside and play video games all day.
Yeah. Is it really hot out? I'll stay inside and play video games. Plus 10, I'll stay inside and play video games. So,
I get text message from my buddy's wife. It's 30 degrees outside. You better not be locked in your basement. I'm like, well, what am I going to do? Go outside and mow the lawn? I don't even own this place.
Press Start to Join, a part of the Alberta Podcast Network. We will talk to you Thursday morning. Give us a rating, a review, and a subscription on iTunes. And we'll talk to you Thursday.
Thanks for listening. Find more great shows like this at CF Pod Network on Twitter.